And I am now recording, at least I think I am. So this is just the basic idea of what we're trying to deal with, which all of you know. So I'm going to skip through this part of it fairly quickly, just to remind us about the ecological footprint that we're trying to reduce and the work we're doing to expand and deepen and connect the conversation. So we are now recording these programs, at least the presenters' parts. We've sort of put the kitchen table conversations on hold for a while. We couldn't find anybody who would pilot them. I think that people just think it's, and I think it's probably just too difficult not to do it online as opposed to face-to-face. So we may have to wait until after the COVID emergency, and the same applies to the charrettes. On the other hand, this project we're starting to move ahead on. We have a volunteer, Ottilia Bertz, who is putting together a proposal to set up the seeds project. And in fact, because the whole theme of our next year is on the seeds, then we will be creating material for that project. So it'll be a sort of iterative process. We'll have ideas coming out of the seeds project that will feed our conversations, and ideas coming out of the conversations that will feed the seeds project. And if you want to be involved in any of this, in helping us to create the program of work we have, or we have in mind, then just contact me. My email is here. So this fall, we've been doing a series of sessions on transformative change, and particularly on talking about values. And this evening, we're talking about valuing quality of life. And then in 2021, the theme will be, as I said, the seeds of a one planet region, to find and showcase people who are doing this work. You can find our past conversations on the One Planet Region resources at Creatively United's website. So we have quite a few resources up there. So tonight we're talking about valuing quality of life. What would it mean if this was a core value? What are the implications for policy? And we have in a moment, we have 3 speakers, and I will introduce Gary, and Jasminder will introduce Raphael. This is the schedule, which we've used for the last couple of meetings, so many of you will be familiar with it. There will be a break of about 10 minutes. The study circles group that we're interested in setting up on talking about values, one thing we have to offer, and I might ask Gertie to talk a moment or so about it. Not only is she hosting the Zoom meeting, and not only is she and Claire managing the breakout room assignments, but Gertie has also suggested that people interested in the values discussion might like to join a series of webinars that Jeremy Lent is putting on in February. So I will just stop sharing at this point, because it'll all just start again. And maybe Gertie, you could just say a word or two about the Jeremy Lent webinars that you're putting on.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. Jeremy Lent is going to be at Programs in Earth Literacies in February, the 4 Tuesdays in February from 10 until noon, 2 hours. And he's going to be speaking on an ecological civilization. This has been one of his projects that he's been working on for some time. And I heard him recently speak at the, not climate change, but the Earth Charter Network out of Costa Rica. He and COPR were one of the guest speakers speaking about an ecological civilization. And I think it's pretty pertinent right now, you know, considering the state that we're in right now. So anyhow, we don't have all the information there yet, but it runs 4 weeks, 4 Tuesday mornings, 10 till noon. And I will send all the information to Trevor, and the registration information as well.
Thank you. Trevor. So if you are interested in being part of a study circle or discussion group on values and shifting values, changing values, a couple of things. One is joining that Earth Literacies program with Jeremy Lent, and it's Jeremy Lent's ideas about 3 key value transformations that we need, that we've been exploring the last 3 months, including this one today. The other thing is, and I will get back specifically to the people who've already indicated, but if anybody else wants to be part of that, simply suggest at this point that we will have people exchange emails and set up a discussion group. We're thinking about maybe setting this up as a Facebook discussion group or something like that. And we've got some other ideas that we're working on. So we want to move ahead with the values discussion group / study circle. It'll be a small step at a time, sort of baby steps to get it going. But it'll also be the first one we've tried to do, so we're learning as we go. So with that, let me focus a bit on today's session and welcome all of you. As I've said earlier, if you're not going to be part of the discussion groups after 6 o'clock, please let us know so that we don't try and assign you to a group. And if you haven't already done so, let us know not only which municipality you live in, but Kimberley, for example, which neighbourhood within Saanich you live in. Similarly, from I'm not sure who PL or PJW is, but oh, maybe that says South Oak Bay. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anyway, let us know. So this evening we're going to be talking about what it means to value quality of life. I'm going to do a quick kick-off to cover some notions of quality of life that are larger scale than we're going to be talking about, and then connect that down to more neighborhood-based quality of life. And we have 2 speakers who are going to be addressing that. And the first who I will introduce is Gary Pemberton. And Gary is a neighborhood organizer, he's waving at us, with the neighborhoods team at the City of Victoria. And they're doing a whole bunch of interesting work around placemaking, around community engagement, around neighborhood togetherness, I guess you'd call it. He will be talking about all that, has a lot of experience as a community organizer and as a neighborhood worker. And so he's going to talk particularly from the point of view of placemaking and neighborhoods. And then we have Raphael Divi, or he's showing up on your screen as Raphael Didier Vincent. And let me ask Jasmindra to introduce Raphael.
Great. Thanks, Trevor, and good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Raphael. I met Raphael as part of the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee. Myself and Claire, we both sit on it, and Raphael gave us a wonderful presentation on how we can see art as a valuable contributor to the quality of one's life. And so he's a budding young artist. And, you know, for these conversations, it's critical that we have the intersectionality lens, looking at race, class, gender, socioeconomic, religion, faith, language, etc. So I think it's very important to also have voices that represent BIPOC communities, or IBPOC, which is Indigenous, Black, and people of color communities, and especially younger ones, because they're the future caretakers of our communities. And so again, Raphael, I met him in community, and he really brings his art into community spirit. And I'm going to let him talk more about his unique outlook of his art. But when we talk about seeds, I think we have to look at the younger ones that stand before us as Raphael, as seeds of social innovators of changing the landscape of our public spaces and our neighborhoods. And so it's, again, it's my pleasure. So I think it's going to be a really full, vibrant conversation with Gary and Raphael. You have an artist and you have a city staff member, and I think they're going to add value to how we see community. And I think the question is, who's quality? How do we each define quality of life? Because we're coming from different lenses. And so again, I think my friend and colleague Raphael is going to add value as an artist. So thank you. And thanks, Raphael, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Jasmindra. So I'm going to kick this off by some quick sort of musing around the notion of, at least I am if this screen will share. I'll stop sharing and go back to them. You couldn't see my screen, could you? Can you see my screen there, folks?
We can, yeah.
Oh, that's weird. It doesn't have the green box around it that usually indicates that it's on. Okay, in that case, let me go to full screen. Sorry about this. So I just very quickly want to cover some sort of big picture thinking around what is quality of life. So the first is first approach is the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, which has been under development and now in practice for probably 20 years. All I want to point out in all of these presentations is how widely the notion of well-being or quality of life, and I tend to conflate the two, is considered. So if you look at the 8 quality of life domains that are here, community vitality, democratic engagement, education, environment, the missing word there should be health of populations, leisure and culture, living standards, and time use. So these are some of the things that they have found are key contributors to people's understanding of quality of life. I find the time use one a very interesting one, for example. Note that living standards itself, which in some ways equates to the notion of GDP, is only one of 8 different measures. And within each of those, there are another 8 indicators. So a total of 64. And the key point in terms of the Canadian Index of Wellbeing is that while the economy has grown between 1994 and 2014, the last year for which they have data, by 38%, the index of well-being only went up 10%. So we're not buying better quality of life by growing our economy, quite plainly. The two are not terribly related. So, well, they're certainly related, but they're certainly not comparable. So it gives us a very different picture on how well we're doing. This is another approach. This was the Canadian Federation of Municipalities. They had a quality of life reporting system. The last report I can find was from 2004, and now on their website, they don't have any reference to this, unfortunately, so I guess they stopped doing it. But again, 6 different factors that they saw as part of quality of life: local economy, natural environment, personal goals and aspirations, fairness and equity, basic needs, and social inclusion. And across those 6, what they called factors or domains, there were altogether 75 indicators. So trying to measure quality of life gives you a very rich picture, but also quite a complex picture. Then we have, most recently, and the Victoria Foundation has been doing vital signs for some years now, and as part of a national program on vital signs. These are the key issues that they consider in Victoria's vital signs, and this report just came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, their latest annual report. Again, you can see many of the same themes emerging: arts and culture, belonging and engagement, economy, environmental sustainability, getting started, which is about sort of infancy and childhood, health and wellness, housing, learning, so on. And again, standard of living is one of the dozen or so measures here, but only one of them. So these are some of the things that go into people's thinking about quality of life. Then a somewhat different way of thinking about it is to actually start to include it in your budget. So this is New Zealand's wellbeing budget. We want a well-being focus to drive the decisions we make. And particularly if you equate well-being with quality of life, which I tend to, this is a very different way of developing a budget that looks beyond traditional measures. And so they talk about, in their living standards framework, 4 forms of capital: natural, social, human, and collectively financial and physical capital, or if you like, economic capital. So they're looking at all 4 forms of capital as the assets that generate well-being. And then down the side there, and I've blown them up in the next slide, 12 domains of well-being. And again, you'll see many of the same themes emerging on the right. So when people think about what is quality of life at a level of national budgets or national indicator systems or local indicator systems at a municipal level, they tend to come up with very much the same sets of issues around quality of life. But I just want to end with a couple of quick thoughts. What connects what we're going to be talking about, which is placemaking and local community art, to being a One Planet community? What does this have to do with being a One Planet community? And I think the answer lies in these two comments, which came out of a discussion that Gary and Raphael and I had yesterday. That if you're going to be more responsible for your own place, if you're going to make it a better place, you need to know and understand it. And you need to know and understand the people who live and work there. So it's about making your place better, and placemaking is one of the ways to do that. And then if we want to change the culture of our place, the arts can play a key role, and that is the work that Raphael does. So I just want to leave you with one thought, and this was last week in the Times Colonist, an interview with the mayor of Colwood, Rob Martin, and I loved this. Ultimately, he said, we want to create a community that creates a level of joy. That's a really interesting idea for a mayor to be saying something like that. Equate that, I think, with quality of life. And so I will leave it at that and turn it over to Gary and let him share his screen and take us through his presentation.
Can you hear me, folks?
Yes.
Okay, great. Funny thing about Rob Martin, I know Rob well. We used to work together many years ago at Boys and Girls Club Services. Rob has a youth worker background in the not-for-profit world, as he was at Boys and Girls Club for a number of years, and he was a fantastic ball of energy there, and I learned a lot from him. So I'm not surprised that he is into politics now and doing such a great job in Colwood. So just wanted to mention that. Okay, so hopefully this works. I have myself recorded for this presentation, and so hopefully it all goes well. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Gary Pemberton. I'm a neighborhood advisor with the City of Victoria, otherwise known as your conduit into City Hall. There's a team of 3 of us that represent all 13 neighborhoods of the city. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about a few ways that neighbors have already improved the quality of life for residents in Victoria, and ways that you can get involved yourself. So, our #1 goal as neighborhood advisors is to empower residents. That's my colleague Mike at our little lemonade stand, which is an info stand for our neighborhood grant project, which is been in place since 2016 and has had some major impact in the public domain as far as residents are concerned. The grant program is broken up into 3 categories: placemaking, activities, and added this year resilience and recovery. And you can see the amounts of dollars that you can receive from these grant streams. The grants are matching grants, which means that for every dollar amount that you ask for, you must match in volunteer labor, professional labor, materials, equipment, donations, administration, and expertise. And this basically ensures that we have community input and involvement for any grant that we handle. So some examples, this is some playable spaces, which are near and dear to my heart. This is our ping pong table that our engineering department actually put in, and the Placemaking Society did the road mural, and this is down at Humboldt and Douglas. You can also see a Gaga ball pit that the neighborhoods team has put together for usage at events. And then Cecilia Cove Park has a naturalized playscape area in basically in place of an area that was fairly underutilized. We also have to the left a bocce court. Now this is a rendering, as it's Oaklands Park has the application in to put a bocce court in next to the tennis courts there, which will happen early in 2021. And then next to that is our Playbox program, which lives in Central Park. And this is an opportunity for families to access for free the equipment inside the Playbox and use it while they're playing at the park. Next up, we have, did you know, we actually have over 243 little libraries in the CRD region in Victoria, which is the most densest amount of little libraries in Canada in this region. And then to the right of that is our very first little free seed library, which is where residents can come and actually access seeds to use in their gardens. And this is located at Michigan and Menzies, right out front at the Boulevard Garden at Discovery Cafe. And so we're hoping to proliferate many, many more of these in the future. Next up, we have the Food Eco District planter boxes. There's 31 of these separated all throughout downtown Victoria, and they're growing herbs and seeds in their planter boxes there. And then over to the right, you can see the Yates Street Community Garden, which is run by the DRA, the Downtown Residents Association, at 1012 Yates Street, which was formerly an empty lot that the city was able to purchase. Next up, we have many murals that have taken place as part of our My Great Neighbourhood grant program. That we have the McCaskill Street mural on top, the giant chicken eating the Volkswagen there. And also that Honeycomb Street mural, as they're starting to pick up the pace in popularity doing murals on the street, is also at McCaskill and Langford. So you can see the residents on that particular Vic West Street have been very active. And then the other mural there you can see is a group of artists who have worked on that piece in the North Park Village. Fisherman's Wharf, retaining walls are great areas for murals to replace graffiti. That's the back of Sen Sushi, which is a beautiful mural done by Sean Shepard. And then we also had a mosaic project, which were done on a number of locations on a street in the Hillside Quadrant neighborhood. It escapes me at the moment. So you can also find a Great Neighbourhood grant to gather out front of the James Bay United Church. There's a gathering space for the public. That's Pemberton Park with the extended picnic table for team operations and opportunities to use. And then one of our very first neighborhood grants for gathering was actually out front of Big Wheel Burger in the Cook Street Village, and it includes planters as well. And that's not just for Big Wheel Burger was the applicant, but the space is obviously free for all citizens to use, regardless of whether they're a customer at that restaurant. You can also prepare. That's the Leonard Street Emergency Bench there and the Grant Street Emergency Program and some of the supplies they've collected through a My Great Neighbourhood grant. And you can create. This is a pedal-powered opportunity to charge your cell phone, if you like, right out front of the the former Oxford Food site in Cook Street Village. And then to the right there, you can also see Oaklands created a mobile tool shed / gardening shed. So that is full of tools and can be used anywhere in the community. We've got a fair bit of innovation that also takes place with our grants. This is the Placemaking Society's put together a portable community table that can hold up to 20 people. You can set this up in a park or in your driveways, you can see, and utilize it for all sorts of purposes. We also illuminate. This is Fernwood Square. I believe they shot a movie here and lit it up, and it looks so great. Residents are like, hey, we need those lights there permanently, so what can we do? So sure enough, My Great Neighbourhood grant program was able to get these lights installed, and we've had a few more installations similar to these popping up. We just put one in Lower Johnson, and they're becoming quite popular. So we also aim to improve our neighborhoods. This is our VTAG program, Victoria Together Against Graffiti. If you wanted to apply for a $1,000 activity grant to improve your neighborhood, you could do an invasive species poll, or you could clean up graffiti like these fellows are doing on the power poles. Lots of opportunity to improve your neighborhood. And to celebrate, these are some of our block parties that take place. We fund a number of block parties throughout the year. On the left, or sorry, on the right there is the Vic West zucchini races. Yes, those are zucchinis that they're running down there. Looks like lots. And this is our James Bay picnic with the firemen out spraying the hose, our Chinese cultural celebrations, and singing in the streets, which is an event that takes place in the Hillside Quarter neighborhood. So what we would like to do is now get you thinking about how we look at public space. We think public space. And this is where I'd like to challenge you, the viewer, in how we learn, how school spaces are set up for kids to how we gather, how public spaces are created for gathering, and how creative can we be with some of the land, how we interact. This is over in Vancouver. They have a games night where they literally roll this cart out with all sorts of games, and people can pick them up and play games in the public squares. How we wait. This is a bus stop, and this is actually, if you look at the signs, the language in back, it's in Russia. So sad to say, Russia has actually beaten Victoria to the punch in having swings at a bus stop. Don't you think you would be more inclined to speak to your neighbor if you were swinging at a bus stop rather than sitting? How we move. This is a goal of mine. I would love to see this happen. At my alma mater, Ryerson University in Toronto, they put in a slide next to the stairs, so it's your choice. This intrigues me to no end. I would love to see something like this in place in Victoria. And I'd like us to rethink how we play. As you can see to the left there, those are a bunch of urban periscopes. And these periscopes go up into the sky to give kids a view of the harbor, that's in Japan there, from an urban center. And then next to that is a very active playscape, a naturalized playscape with the. So on that note, how do we interpret risk? You can see those two lads up there. If that makes you uneasy, well, sometimes allowing kids to have or introducing risk into the elements of play makes them more cautious rather than less. So maybe we need to think about unbubble wrapping our public playgrounds. How we challenge ourselves. This is a project through Kaboom in the United States, which is an entity that gets involved in giving grants to great ideas to make spaces playable. And this is, you ever tried to see how fast you can run alongside a speed counter for traffic? Well, this is a speed counter on the sidewalk. And then we also need to think of our youth. I would like nothing more than to see fads like American Ninja Warrior live on through our playgrounds. This is a playground in Australia that actually has a start and finish course for people to train on outdoors. And then to the right of that, you can see how simple it would be to add in these types of elements off to the side of a naturalized park or playscape. And even finally, just how we rest. This is a great example of public space being utilized to just plain relax. So that's it for placemaking for now. The other program that I would like to talk to you about is our inaugural Local Champions cohort, which took place this year. Essentially, it brought together 30 folks for a community-based leadership program. It was low cost, low barrier. There were 6 sessions in total, plus a weekend intensive. Essentially, we were able to bring folks together from all different backgrounds to come together and teach them what they need to learn to become a community connector or become a local champion. Why? Well, there's a lot of folks out there who are already doing this type of work, but unfortunately, they burn out really, really fast. It's terrible to think that you're maybe the only one out there who's trying to make improvements in your community, and if you don't get that feeling of excitement and energy from other people, you're more inclined to lose your energy for your community. Because let's face it, most people's work, family, spouse, take priorities over their community. So what we really wanted to do was just create a safe space for people who are like-minded to connect, and then hopefully keep the alumni together to be able to mentor the next cohort that would follow. So the topics included in the course were, as you see here, asset-based community development. We wanted to teach people how to meet and facilitate, have cultural competencies in place, and teach them how to engage others, deal with conflict, give them strength for public speaking, teach them how local government works, and then have them actually apply all this with a project practicum. And some of the outcomes we had, just a few to mention, we had kindness hampers put together through folks at the ICA. We had a Garden Buddies program come out of it for food security, a SMILE project as a COVID response, community asset mapping. We had an anti-stigma community learning event in Burnside Gorge to understand homelessness better. We had community outreach cards created to reach out to folks who were socially isolated. And we have one upcoming event where folks would like to do dinner and a chat just to get to know your neighbor. So essentially, this is a program, Local Champions, that you could get involved in upcoming this spring. If you're interested, you do have to apply, and we'll be looking to add another 25 to 30 people in the second cohort. And really the whole philosophy behind this was to change the mantra. We want people to say, hey, instead of look what they did to our neighborhood, to look what we did. And hopefully with this message, people will be more inclined to improve the quality of life in their neighborhood and really get involved and become a community connector themselves and realize that it's not so hard and it's incredibly rewarding to work with other residents in your neighborhood to improve not only their quality of life, but yours and your children and future generations. So thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions later on in the evening, and I look forward to working with you all on the next stage.
Gary, thank you very much. And I would just to say for those of you who are not in the City of Victoria, that the ideas that Gary has presented, while City of Victoria ideas, there's no reason they can't happen in every municipality in the region. And in fact, that should be our goal. So if you don't have a good neighbourhoods program in your municipality, you've got a model now in Victoria that you can go to council and say, hey, we need this. Raphael, let me turn it over to you, and then we'll have some conversation before we break for a reorganization.
Okay, hello, hi everybody. Thank you, Gary, thank you, Trevor, thank you, Jasmindra, for welcoming all of us here. It'd be beautiful to see the faces of everyone that's watching, but it's nice to know that there's people here in community. I think if we're starting with the quality of life, I'd love to start with a song. So what is life without music, right? If we're not singing or something, there's something wrong, right? So I'd love to share a song with everyone. This song is sang in Creole, as I'm originally from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. That's my background. And the song is called Songez vous n'êtes pas là, which means remember your day. Songez vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, qui m'oubliez. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là, son monde ouais, ça te fait là, ouais, auto parler, ouais, ça te fait là, ouais, qui m'oublier. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Songez, qui m'oubliez. So, songez, vous n'êtes pas là. Remember your day. Wapwe sa te fait là. You'll see what you've done. Wapwe koto prale. You'll see where you're going. Wapwe ki munu ye. You'll see who you are. Songez. And that's a song I appreciate singing at the end of the day to reflect on, you know, the actions, both positive, negative, confusing, anything we do throughout the day, right? To reflect on who we are at the end of
Raphael, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
That's
Now,
better.
Oh, could everybody hear me?
We
Yes.
can now. There was a few seconds when we couldn't, when after your song, but go ahead, you're fine.
Oh, okay. So this is okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was saying that the song is mainly sung at the end of the day for me to remember the actions, both positive and negative, that went through the day, to reflect and to remember who we are at the end of that day, right? And me, Raphael, I really appreciate art in community, built with community, as a way to bring people together by doing collaborative projects. My father's an artist. I have some aunts that are artists, and it's always beautiful to learn from them as I'm navigating my own work and what I like to do. So I'll share a little bit of some of the work that I've done in community and how it's really impacted my personal development, because doing art alone is one thing, but when you do art with people, I never knew how impactful that was for me, to have many different hands, different faces, to have people that never thought they could hold a paintbrush or don't call themselves an artist, but be involved in that dynamic. So I'll share my screen, and I'll share just a little bit of some of the work that I've done.
Raphael, your
The
sound,
community involvement.
your sound is cutting out again.
My sound's cutting out again.
Yeah, we're not hearing anything right now.
Oh, we got the screen sharing anyway.
No, can you hear me good? Is this okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I have maybe there we go. So can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I've put together a Mandela project called the Unity Mandela, where it's done as a collaborative art initiative where everyone comes together and everybody paints one piece of an object. And these objects are very simple. They are actually coat hangers. So I have a series of wooden coat hangers that I put together in a series of ways to create a mandala. And with the community, what we do is I've gone to schools, And we've done projects where we talk about mathematics, science, English, art, and music to kind of represent the different facets of education. And we've done some summer camps. We do teamwork, environmental impact discussions to have the process go behind the art piece. So a little bit about the project. As we navigate the project, it's really simple. The participants get together, they paint 1 to 2 coat hangers, and these coat hangers, for me, the hangers represent that no matter what kind of clothing people wear, we all hang our different clothing from different cultures on the same hangers. And the hanger is almost the skeleton of our fabric, and the paint and ideas and emotions is what's painted onto the hangers. The process of the Mandela Project goes around reflecting on the vision. It's not just an art piece, but it's a reflective process for the participants where we aim to have them represent themselves through video, written, or audio. And different, because everyone is different. Everyone either wants to record themselves, speak, or write. And we do it as school projects, community projects, and then we do a closing ceremony where there's food, music, the participants come together and they present the piece to their to the families. And for example, this piece was the first piece that was built with the Baha'i community. And we had music, parents were there. This is a piece that was built with the West Shore Center for Learning and Training. We had a little brunch outside gathering. And it was a really, really heartwarming experience for everyone to see the pieces that came together collectively. This piece was done with Cedar Hill Middle School. We had about, I forget how many kids, but 2 classes came together to build this mandala. And this was the art piece with the West Shore Center for Learning and Training. So the pieces, for example, this was the piece with the Baha'i Junior Youth Group where the participants painted 1 hanger to represent hope and 1 hanger to represent despair. And we had a short 1-hour writing practice where the kids just went through that reflection. And this was the topics that the groups had themselves already that we came to facilitate with the mandala. It was a beautiful experience. Parents had a good time, the kids had a good time, and it was a great way to represent that that collective work, right? So, can you? Where am I? Here we are. So if you look at it, a coat hanger is like a canvas that any ideas can be placed upon it. Before COVID happened, we were working on some projects where we were going to do a collaboration with William Head's Penitentiary in Victoria, which is one of the penitentiaries on the island. And we wanted to do a project where we had the families and the kids could come visit during the visiting hours for the current residents. And we would build a mandala collectively for people that are outside the penitentiary, people that are inside the penitentiary, and have a living art piece there to represent that. When COVID all happened, life was upside down for everyone, but we continued our journey. So that's just another example of how the Mandela Project can be used in community. I'm really grateful for the City of Victoria. I had received a grant with the City of Victoria to do a project. We did this project through the City of Victoria where can everyone see my screen? Just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So with the City of Victoria, we did a project at the Royal Athletic Park. We had community get involved. People were painting on tables, and it was great that it didn't rain, but it was a lot of fun. We had kids that were from 4 years old to people that were 50, 60 years old. And we all had a beautiful time painting and getting together. And this is one of the projects that community developments in the City of Victoria with their grants, I was able to do. So I'm really grateful for that. It's always a beautiful opportunity to do projects. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about also is with other ideas like Gary was talking about that can be implemented in communities. I had this concept a while ago that called sacred trees, and sacred trees is a project that is very close to my heart because it provides the opportunity to create a legacy project for communities and to inspire people that live in cities to have wonder for the environment and care for nature and the forest. Because that was always the problem for me. I was always wondering, how do we get people in cities to really care about the forest? How do we get them to be in awe of nature? Because sometimes the connection is not there, right? Sometimes there is that disconnect. So I fell upon a beautiful art form called tree shaping or arbor sculpture, where as a plant grows, they shape it into all these different, they weave it into different ways, and then the tree solidifies into this magnificent art piece and beautiful, almost mystical art form, but made with nature. And I wanted to share some of that with you guys, that some communities have done this around the world and some people are doing this, and it's a beautiful way to have a living art piece in the city that inspires people to look at nature a little bit differently. So here's a couple pictures to share that with you guys. So this is one of many art pieces that were built where they grew these trees and made heart shapes. This is Alex Earldison, and he's currently deceased, but in the 70s and 60s, he has something called a tree circus on Gilroy Farms in the States, and he would build these magnificent pieces. This was built by Poop Tree, where they have stickman figures built with trees. So for me, whenever I see these, I'm like, oh my goodness, how do cities not just have these guys lying around everywhere? This is a tree chair that was built. This is again the family that worked on these art pieces. Every time I see these are beautiful sculptures that can be put in community and shared. This is in, I think this was Germany. They took willow branches and they built this magnificent piece to living cathedral. That I think that's what they called it. And people would host community groups in there and gatherings. So these are possible. People have already done these. And it inspires people to look at nature a little bit differently. And these take time. Of course, these take time. Small trees like this can take up to 5 to 6, 7 years. And these can be implemented to really inspire people to look at nature a little bit differently. When Gary was talking about how do we play, one of the things that I've worked on personally was a mandala that we did in community, where we painted a mandala on a soccer field. And I called a couple artist friends of mine, and we painted a 50-foot mandala in diameter on a soccer field. So this was a beautiful project that involved friends, we had music, and this is a project that's impermanent because as the grass grows, it's cut and the piece disappears, and that's okay. So this is the final picture of what that art piece kind of looked like when it was finished. And that's Nilu's mandala. That's what I call this mandala, Nilu's mandala. So these art pieces, for example, Nilu's mandala painted on the grass, I see this as a potential community project as well, where you can have multiple groups outdoors coming together and being able to participate in these processes. So for me, community art, cultural art, bringing people together, that's always a beautiful way to plant that seed in people's minds and to show that we can still have fun in community. And especially in these COVID times, we don't know what's going to happen with policies in this next year. So I'm always excited to work towards putting together ideas to inspire future generations and things that can outlive us, you know, things that can outlive us. And it's we won't be here for a tree that's here 60, 80, 100 years from now, but the people after us will still be there to ponder and wonder on these sculptures, that they'll be like, people took their time to plant and organize ideas for everyone, right? So that's kind of what inspires me. So yeah, thank you.
Raphael, thank you very much. And I love that, particularly the idea of something that lives on beyond our lifetime as a legacy. And the older I get, the more attractive that becomes. Jan, we're running a little bit past our plans, but I think that's okay. Let me just check in with Gertie and Claire. Are you going to need 10 minutes, or are you fairly well done in terms of groups? I suspect you are.
I think we're good. What do you think, Gertie?
Well, we have 3 people that I don't have the locations of right now. I sent a message to him, just find the names here.
Because what I'm thinking is we don't need 10 minutes for a break. We can take just 3 or 4 minutes for a short break. So
yeah, maybe.
Well, I think it would be, if you could just maybe think of some of the questions that you might have for the speakers. We've had some great input on quality of life, and that's certainly what you're going to come together when we get into the small groups, is what does quality of life look like in your own local community, and what would it be like to feel that was significant to the policies and decision making if we really valued quality of life. So that's a question that you're going to come back into when we form the small groups. But just before that, maybe there are some quick questions that you have as the speakers, not to get into a discussion with them now, but if there's anything that you would like to clarify so that you could take that information back into your small group discussion. So this is just kind of clarity questions if you have some. But Gertie, did you want to ask about those 3 people first?
Yes, I do. If you could, Betsy McKenzie, Monica Wynn, and Thor Henrik. I don't have.
Gertie, I've just sent you a message. We've got them on the list.
And Monica is leaving early anyway.
Okay, so it sounds like, Claire, you've got it handled. So let's just go into if there's any questions that anybody has for the speakers, and then we'll just do a really quick kind of energy break, and then come back and we'll have you go into small groups, and I'll kind of do a little guidance thing about small group discussions before you actually do that. So But first, is there any hands up if there's anybody that has a kind of a clarifying question to any of the three speakers about their presentations and that how that relates to quality of life? One thing I had with Gary was a little bit more about the Community Connectors program. Is this the second phase it's going into, and how did the first one go?
Yeah, we'll be looking to form a second cohort early spring. Our first cohort was hijacked by the pandemic in that we would come together and create a lot of energy just being in the same physical location and bouncing ideas off of each other and starting to work together on projects. And then we had to bring it online and use Zoom to finish the course. And then we actually were able to come together at an outdoor venue, safely spaced apart on a day that rained for its entirety while we presented our final practicum projects. But we were so happy to be together in the same space at the end of the summer there that it didn't matter. The energy was still so positive. So we're hoping to keep the first group of local champions together to mentor, to come in and speak to the second group, and then create this alumni of community connectors that spread out throughout the neighborhoods. And we actually took folks from Greater Victoria. The majority of folks were from Victoria proper, but we took people from Saanich, Esquimalt, and beyond because, of course, there's nothing like that being offered on the island. So we're excited to do another cohort, and just fingers crossed that it will be an in-person cohort rather than online.
Right. That's amazing. That's just, I've dreamt of those kind of projects for a long time, so it's great to see one happening. Anybody else have a question that you want to ask? Jasmindra.
Yeah, thanks, Gary and Raphael. Great presentations, and just the examples that you both gave are very innovative. I'm an urban planner myself, so I'm always looking at cultural planning, and I think you both brought so many unique examples right here in our own backyard, which is exciting. And I guess my question to ponder to both of you is, you have Raphael as a community artist that is bringing community together, and you have someone like Gary within the city engagement and within the city. So how do we do more bridging, Gary and Raphael, between community artists, and especially those from the IBPOC, Indigenous, Black, and People of Color communities? And what can the city do more of? So to make sure that we know of Raphael and his projects and other artists and their projects, because it is really through art. It's beautiful, through music, through art. We all know that we come together and we get to talk about politics. We get to talk about the sacred ecology, feminism, critical thinking, systems thinking. So I think it's really pivotal, maybe just to reflect, and how do we really do that community bridging? So I'm kind of leaving that with Gary and Raphael, maybe after the break, to think about what can the city do more of, and how do we promote our community artists and funding options for them?
And maybe I could just add a comment too, for something not so much for the two of them, but to think about and maybe discuss in the small groups. We're, of course, Conversations for a One Planet region. And so how do we bring into the kind of initiatives you're doing, Gary, and the sort of work you're doing, Raphael, the link to living more sustainably? So moving to a one planet city or a one planet region or a one planet neighborhood. And what is the role that community art and the role that placemaking can play in bringing that conversation out and having people think about it and work on it? And maybe that's already happening in some of what you're doing. And if it is, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, just quickly, what I can tell you is, and my colleague who's here, Kimberly Stratford as well, who's another neighborhood advisor, it's great to have her here as well to join in on these conversations. But artists shape our neighborhoods and communities. Any interesting project you see in the public realm that you like is most likely done by an artist and inspired by an artist. We need to stop allowing developers to shape our community and hand that power over to our artists who make it unique and great and vibrant and interesting and interactive. And one way we do that is, yes, through our grants and our neighborhood connections and our opportunities, but we were just having this conversation about community amenity contributions at our meeting this past week, Kimberly and I and the other members of our team, about how can we have more opportunity for those funds to go into grant projects, artistic projects, things that residents want and desire, but we need to direct that funding towards those types of projects versus where those funds currently go, which is right now, a lot of it ends up directed into housing funds. So there's lots to unpackage there, but I think if you understand the impact artists have on our neighborhoods, even at a microcosmic level, it's immediate and it's vast. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity that we have as municipal staff to try and forward that agenda.
And Raphael, did you want to make any comment on that?
I definitely feel that I agree with Gary with developers and and the way they choose to to create spaces in a way that doesn't not forward thinking. So it would be great to really find a way to also sit down with a lot of developers unions and having I'm sure there are some groups that do have sit downs with developers unions, but it'd be great to have a really community-based way that we have access to future planning before developments get put together. That way artists and city planners and developers can work in those ways. And I've seen in the past some places where it's shown, but it's always hard personally for me, when I'm involved doing my art, I have to tunnel vision to just do this for now, and I have no mind to look at anything else. So it's always nice when there's someone to reach out to and talk to, and it really helps that collaboration.
Thanks. I would think that maybe we should just sort of go into the small groups now. And but maybe before we do that, we'll just take like a 3 or 4 minute, just kind of turn off your camera, stretch around a bit, and then come back in again. And so when we come back into the groups, really think about, well, how do we as communities make sure that the developers don't take it over, that there are communities that we bring the quality of life that we want into there? How do we influence that? And so having that discussion, and certainly as Trevor said, how do we do that in a way that really does keep us moving towards sustainability, living within the one planet? So think of that when you come back. And when we're in our small groups, I'll just kind of put out some guidelines now so that when we come back, we can just go in. But one of the things about quality of life and about living together on one planet is really about how we do talk together and how we develop this civil society. And so it's as much about how we talk as what we talk about. So being able to make sure that we're taking turns in our discussions, that we give space for each other. And sometimes that we go over these things every time we meet in small groups. But really, it's a practice for us to learn how to talk together really meaningfully. And not just to get really abstract, but keep bringing it back to, what about me? What about my community? What about you? How do we actually do this, instead of this being kind of a rant about the world out there? But how do we keep bringing it back into our interactions in our place, and our quality of life and how we own that together. And that sense of listening with curiosity for each other in terms of what is it that the other person values. So just kind of keeping a few of those things in mind about how we do our small group discussion. So if Gertie and Claire feel ready to say we've got everybody, is there anything else, Gertie?
That they are. I got a message from Claire. They're ready to go. Why don't we take a 3 or 4 minute break?
Yeah,
I
just
will
turn
just
your camera off and.
I'll run the slideshow while it's while we're on a break, and then.
But don't go too far away.
Yeah.
So back in 3 or 4 minutes.
Claire or Gertie will put us into small groups in about 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll reconvene at 6:45. So we'll go into small groups at 6:15. Got half an hour. We'll reconvene at 6:45 for some final feedback. Thank you. And thank you to our speakers. I'm not sure if you're staying on or not, but if you're not, thank you so much. And if you are, you're very welcome.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you in the small groups, but not as a facilitator, just as one of the members. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Talk later.